Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 27th of October of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first, we are going to talk about the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. During the previous 24 hours, he made lots of very interesting statements worth our attention. And this is the first one. Ukraine and the European Union will prepare a ceasefire plan within 7 to 10 days, but Putin is unlikely to accept it. So as you can see, Zelensky is seeking for a ceasefire. Not for a peaceful settlement of the conflict, but just for a ceasefire. So the question is, why does Zelensky need ceasefire but not a peaceful settlement? And to get an answer to this question, first of all, we need to discuss another statement that was made by Zelensky during the previous 24 hours. Zelensky stated that against Pokrovsk, the Russians have concentrated their main strike group, a significant number of soldiers. Of course, this creates a difficult situation in Pokrovsk and neighboring areas. Heavy fighting in the city and on its approaches. Logistics are strained. So Zelensky is trying to tell us that everything that the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and the head and the chief of the general staff of the armored force of the Russian Federation stated yesterday was right and was truth. So would like to remind you that yesterday they told us that the Russians managed to create two cauldrons. The first cauldron was created on the territory of the Kupyansk agglomeration, and the second cauldron was created on the territory of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. The Russians stated that as for the territory of Kupyansk, they managed to encircle up to 5,000 soldiers, and this is a very big number. Furthermore, today the Russians gave us additional details about the situation in these two cauldrons. The Russians stated that Russian troops continue to destroy encircled Ukrainian armored forces groups in Kupyansk and Krasnoarmeysk. The Russians stated that Ukrainians made 4 attempts to break through the encirclement on the right bank of the river Oskol, but Russians reported that Ukrainians lost 50 soldiers. As for the city of Pokrovsk, the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours lost 60 soldiers. So we see that Ukrainians are suffering huge losses, and within 10 or 7 days, as was told by Zelensky, these two groups of forces can be reduced significantly. And Zelensky understands that he needs this ceasefire with the purpose to take these soldiers out of these cauldrons. So most likely now we see something like a trade between Western countries and the Russian Federation. But it seems that Russians will never accept a proposal from the Western countries, because Russians understand that they have very high chances to encircle and to capture these groups of forces. When talking about Kupyansk, 5,000 soldiers, and when talking about Pokrovsk, 5,500. Furthermore, during the previous 24 hours, we got additional videos from both cauldrons. So, for example, this is the situation in the Kupyansk agglomeration. And here we can see those attempts when Ukrainians were trying to cross the river Oskol and to escape the encirclement, but the Russians, as we discussed in the previous videos, were controlling the river Oskol for 100%, and when Russians discovered another vehicle of the armored forces of Ukraine, they destroyed this vehicle immediately. A bit further to the north, we have another place where Ukrainians used to have a pontoon bridge. We can see the video of the same type. Here we can see another vehicle that was trying to escape the cauldron from the eastern bank of the river Oskol to the western bank, but when the Russians discovered this vehicle, the Russians destroyed this vehicle immediately. So once again, Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours made 4 attempts to escape this cauldron, to escape this encirclement, and during those attempts the Ukrainians lost 50 soldiers. So that is why we can say that currently there are no more 5,000 soldiers encircled in the Kupyansk agglomeration. Currently we have just 4,940 soldiers, and that's it. And most likely this number will become less and less within the next days. Now let's talk about the Pokrovsk agglomeration, where the Russians also managed to encircle Ukrainians. As you can see, we have changes on the ground, and they are very important. First of all, let's discuss them in details, and first of all, let's compare the map between the dates. So this is the situation by the end of the 26th of October of 2025, and this is the situation by the end of the 27th of October. As you can see, according to changes, the Russians improved their positions in the southeastern part of the settlement of Mirnograd, and the Russians improved their positions in the northeastern part of the same settlement. So the Russians answered the city, and now the Russians are digging in deeper, and most likely the Russians will continue advancing, and during the next 24 hours most likely we're gonna get additional changes. But the most important video is coming from the western part of the city of Pokrovsk, more precisely from the northwestern, this one. As you can see, we have significant changes on the ground. Once again, this is the situation by the end of the 26th of October, and this is the situation by the end of the 27th of October. Basically, we have adjusted almost the entire industrial area in the northwestern part. The most important area, as you can see, now Russians control M30 and M30, M32 and M30 roads that Ukrainians used to have for their logistic. This video was published by Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians in different parts of the city of Pokrovsk, and one of the episodes was geolocated exactly at this point. Ukrainian FPV drone attacked a Russian soldier exactly at this point. Based on this video, we came to the conclusion that Russians managed to improve their positions significantly in the northwestern part of the city. Currently, we can say that the distance between between positions of the armed force of the Russian Federation in the northwestern part of the city of Pokrovsk and in the southern part of the city of Rodinska is already less than 5 kilometers and 500 meters, which is already nothing for FPV drone operators that are flying above this territory. There are hundreds of drones that don't allow Ukrainians to escape the encirclement. Furthermore, as you can see, during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos from the most northwestern and the northern parts of the city of Pokrovsk. The Russians are hunting the Ukrainians, trying to attack them and not allow Ukrainians to escape this part of the city. So as we can see, the situation is worsening. Furthermore, once again, yesterday there were 5,500 soldiers encircled, but according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, currently the number is 5,440 soldiers. So as we can see, this number is also reducing. Now let's discuss the situation to the northeast of the city of Pokrovsk and the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Ukrainians are trying to counterattack in this area, and they're using all means they have for these purposes. During the previous 24 hours, as you can see, the Ukrainians once again managed to improve their positions. Let's discuss everything in details. So this is the situation by the end of the 25th of October of 2025, and this is the day before the Russians announced about the creation of 2 cauldrons. By the end of the 26th of October of 2025, the Ukrainians managed to improve their positions in the settlement by the name of Sukhetskaya. So this video was published by Ukrainians, and here we can see how 2 Ukrainian soldiers raised the Ukrainian flag above the building in the most southern part of the settlement. Based on this video, we have adjusted this small pocket. Furthermore, yesterday we got report that Ukrainians improved their positions in the area of the settlement by the name of Novoshachova. Here we can see a close combat between Russian soldiers and Ukrainian soldiers. So this is a Ukrainian soldier and this is a Russian soldier. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map as well. And today, pro-Ukraine resources gave us additional updates about the situation on the ground, and according to them, Ukrainians managed to improve their position significantly during the previous 24 hours. We see that the Ukrainians launched their full-scale and major counter-offensive operation with the purpose to unblock Ukrainians that were encircled by Russians on the territory of the city of Pokrovsk. Currently, you need to understand one thing: Ukrainians suffer huge losses because the Russians are in defense, and Ukrainians need to counterattack, sending more and more troopers for these purposes. And furthermore, we got probably one of the most important videos of the previous 24 hours, and this video was published from the city by the name of Rodinska. In this video, we can see how Ukrainians counterattacked Russians on the territory of the city using armored vehicles. In this video, we can see several infantry fighting vehicles that were attacking Russian positions in the eastern part of the city. Ukrainians were attacking Russians with machine guns that were installed on these vehicles. And this video confirms that today Ukrainians are trying to counterattack with the purpose to recapture the city of Rodinska, because without the city, Ukrainians will not be able to release 5,000 soldiers on the territory of agglomeration. So currently there is a nightmare on the territory of Rodinska. Probably one of the bloodiest clashes ever are taking place exactly in this area. The Ukrainians went all in, and we need to understand that they are going to be one wave after another from Ukrainian side, just with one purpose: to unblock the settlement of Rodinska, and this will allow Ukrainians to escape this cauldron and to, let's say, save these 5,400 soldiers. So this is the situation, but as of the end of the 27th of October, it seems that the settlement of Rodinska is still under control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. The Russians understand the value of the settlement. They will also send one wave of soldiers after another. They will try to hold their positions, and currently everything depends exactly for this settlement. But we need to understand that while the Ukrainians are trying to counterattack Russians here, the Russians are tightening the news in the western direction, in the city of Mirnograd. So maybe by the time Ukrainians will let's say release the city of Rodinska and recapture, maybe by this time this is going to be not enough, and this is going to be too late, so this might be too late, and Ukrainians would be caught by Russians in cauldron by moving and by changing positions on the ground in the city limits. So this is the situation. Anyway, let's wait and see. Currently there are very heavy clashes. Furthermore, today we got another very interesting video. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians launched another major offensive operation, this time not even in the direction of the city of Mirnograd or the city of Pokrovsk. It seems the Russians have a plan, and it seems that the Russians are trying to trick the Ukrainians or to outflank them. So Russians began advancing in the fields, so like this. And it seems that Russians began offensive operation maybe in the direction of the settlement of Drushkovka. So they will try to get as close as possible to Tarskoye, Petrivka, Raevskaya, so they can break through Ukrainian defense, while Ukrainians are trying to counterattack Russians on the territory of Rodinska. The Russians may try to break through in the direction of Drushkovka. And this can lead to the situation when the city of Konstantinovka would be caught by Russians in cauldron. So maneuvers, and just maneuvers. And as we discussed 5 or 6 months ago, this is the area of the general battle, probably of the entire special military operation. Everything will be resolved here, exactly here, how exactly the special military operation will be finished. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Zaporozhye direction. As we discussed in the previous video, the most important updates are coming from this area as well. Today, the pro-Russian sources reported that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to secure 3 villages. The Russians secured the settlement of Yegorovka, the Russians secured the settlement of Privilna, and the Russians secured the settlement of Novonikolaevka. Based on the report and based on the video that was published by pro-Russian sources, we adjusted the map. Let's take a look at this video. This video was published today, and here we can see how the process, how the fighting for these villages were taking place. As usually, artillery strike, aviation strikes, FPV drone attacks, and soldiers, Russian soldiers that were raising the Russian flag in different parts of the settlements they managed to secure. So one of the flags was raised by Russians in this part of Yegorovka. Based on this video and based on the report of the Minister of Defense, we have adjusted the map. Another flag, 3 more flags were raised on the territory of Privilna. This is the first, this is the second, and this is the third place. Based on these flags and based on this video, we adjusted the map, and 2 more flags were raised on the territory of Nikolaevka. So the first one was located here, the second one here. So as we can see, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. Now it's clear that during the next days, the Russians will continue with villages of Rybno and Krasnogorovskaya. I believe that in 1 or 2 days, both villages would be captured by Russians. Furthermore, We believe that Russians will continue offensive operation further in the direction of the settlement of Danilovka. If Russians can capture the settlement of Danilovka, which is located on the Russian side of the river Yanchul, then the Russians will be able to cut physically R85 road between the cities of Pokrovsk and Gulay-Pole. This can lead to huge problems with logistics. Furthermore, today pro-Ukrainian sources confirmed that the Russians began advancing in the direction of the settlement of Vishnyovo. And the most important detail of this article is that the pro-Ukrainian sources added significant gray zone. As you can see, there's a very huge gray zone in this area, and up to 50% of the settlement of Vishnyovo is already located in this gray zone, which means that the Russians are already there and that there are very heavy clashes for the settlement, and most likely Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this territory in coming days. Furthermore, according to this report, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians managed to break through the fence and to enter the settlement of Novo-Alexandriivka, and currently there are very heavy clashes as well. So the situation on this flank is very difficult for Ukrainians. Now let's go a bit further to the south, and once again Russians secured also the settlement of Novo-Nikolaevka, and this is probably one of the most important progress because Russians managed to capture the village that is located on the Ukrainian side of the river Yanchul. So the river was crossed, as we understand, and now from these positions Russians will continue offensive operation further in the direction of the settlement by the name of Uspenovka, and Russians from these positions can advance further in the southwestern direction towards this dense network of the fortifications between Okhotniche and the settlement of Novo-Uspenovska. So it seems that the Uspenovka fortified area will collapse also very soon, and probably even in coming days. Another important video was published by Russians from the village by the name of Vodolaska. So in this video we can see how Russians, as a result of reconnaissance operation, managed to discover positions of the 67th Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And when Russians discovered these positions, they attacked them with Iskander missiles. During this video we can see several Iskander strikes on this temporary deployment point of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, and as a result of this attack, as we understand, the Ukrainians suffered huge losses. So very important video, and most likely the Ukrainians were planning to use these forces for the purpose to stabilize the situation in the area of Pokrovsk or in the Zaporozhye direction, but as we understand, those forces were pretty damaged by Russians. Now let's discuss the situation in the Liman direction. During the previous 24 hours, as you can see, no changes were recorded, and probably this situation is the first time for a very long period of day. So as for the 27th of October, we got just one very important update that was provided by pro-Russian source who is familiar with the situation on the ground, and today he stated that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to cut physically the road between the city of Liman and the village of Yampol. So this source didn't specify where exactly Russians cut the road, but we believe that this situation took place somewhere here. So this is a very important piece of news. If the Russians indeed manage to cut the road, then the logistics for Ukrainians in Yampol will start suffering huge problems. Furthermore, as we can see, this road the Ukrainians used to supply forces between Liman and Siversk, and this logistic road was captured by Russians. And if it's true, then Russians have chances to continue advancing further in the direction of the settlement by the name of Dibrova, which is located along the river of Seversky Donets. So this is a very important piece of news, and we are waiting for proofs and confirmations. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.